Harvest isn't easy. Long hours, heavy loads, hard miles. But the work doesn't stop when the crop comes out. At Landis, we know next year's harvest is already in the making. It starts with choosing the right seed. It builds with acreage inputs that push your crop further. And it stays sharp with Sky Scout technology that finds issues before they cost you bushels. This isn't chance, it's planning, and it's what we do together. Talk to your Landis advisor or stop at your local Landis location today, and let's get next season started.
Welcome to Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. I'm your host, David Geiger. Today on Farm Here Daily, there's been a big effort to make E15 available all year long. Monte Shaw with the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association joins us to talk about how that could be important in a tough farm economy. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media at Field Forward Pod. We would love to have you join our community, keeping folks informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Here Daily. And joining me on Farm Here Daily, we're going to take a look at some of the ethanol news going around the country. To do so, we have Monte Shaw, the Executive Director of the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association. Monte, always good to have you on the program. And we have some pretty interesting news going on across the country, and that is California is now accepting E15. I think they were the only state in the nation to not allow it, to specifically say you can't have E15, but now they're opening that up. Is that right?
Yeah, fuel laws are one of the few places where we still kind of have the federalist system, if you will, where there's overarching federal government regulations. And then you have sometimes more restrictive state regulations. And so at the state level, California was the last state who still had a prohibition on selling E15. And prices have gotten way out of whack there. We've showed them what it could mean to have. I mean, you've seen how much ethanol E15 can save you over E10 here. In places like Iowa, even that extra 5% can save you anywhere from 10 to 20 cents a gallon. Well, in California, where they, on top of that, they tack on their carbon pricing, if you will, through their low carbon fuel standard, every drop of ethanol you get can really lower the cost of fuel out there. And so, in a state where I don't think we've ever had any positive legislation for ethanol ever pass. It was amazing to watch the bill. It's called AB Assembly Bill, AB 30, pass the House unanimously. And then it passed the Senate unanimously. It passed every committee along the way unanimously. And just a few days ago, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed that into law. So we're still waiting. The bureaucrats at the California Resources Board need to put out some guidance so that retailers feel safe that they are selling it in the right way. We're hopeful, you never know, but we're hopeful that they'll actually move quickly, given the literally unanimous support for this provision through the legislature. So that's a big market. You're talking about hundreds of millions of gallons of potential demand. We'll have to see. There's equipment compatibility that they'll deal with. I think most of that's going to be good to go out there. They have pretty new equipment in California to do their other environmental regulations and stuff. So we're excited to see that happen. And I think that puts the pressure on Congress. I mean, I've kind of teased our Iowa delegation that it's pretty embarrassing when the state of California can move quicker than Congress. So.
Absolutely. Something about that, it just seems so strange in a way, because we have California, which, as you said, huge economy. I think if it was a its own nation state, it would be like number 5 in the world, number 4, number 5, something like that. It's huge. And to go from not allowing E15 to unanimously passing this, what's the background? Why now? Why is this going on?
I don't live there, so I have to kind of take what I'm told secondhand from people who do live there. But, California has for many years had a very strong environmental agenda, carbon agenda, all these things. And it just seemed like, even on the East Coast, I mean, even like in Massachusetts, it's like they'll talk a good game about it. And then when they just, when they get close to actually passing legislation and they get the cost estimates, they'd be like, well, wait a minute, we're not sure we want to do this. And California's always like, don't care what the cost is. We're going ahead. We're doing what we want to do. We're going ahead. Apparently, from what I've heard, costs out there are so expensive, $7 a gallon gas, things like that that there's kind of been a mini revolt, and people are fed up with the high costs, and they still want to do what's right, but let's find a smarter way to do it. And so, I mean, E15 was very low hanging fruit, as I mentioned. I mean, here it's 10 to 20 cents. When you add the carbon value of ethanol, the low carbon value of ethanol in a state that has a carbon standard for its fuel, I mean, you're probably talking 20 to 30 cents a gallon cheaper than what they're selling now. That adds up to just millions and millions and millions of dollars. So I think they just finally. The other thing is I mean, they've tightened their restrictions on liquid fuels so much that a couple of the refineries in California have shut down. And so they're actually, and the electric cars haven't come along as fast as they wanted. So I think they're actually in a little bit of a shortage of just actual physical gallons of fuel. And if we can expand that by 5%, by adding in another 5% of ethanol, that's a win-win. It's low carbon, it's cheaper, and it's there. We can ship it. I mean, our plants are not running at full capacity across the board. So we definitely have the ability to grind up that corn, help the farmers here, help the rural economy here, and also help Californians save a tremendous amount of money at the pump.
I want to touch back on that plants are not moving at full capacity, but I did want to do a quick note. E85 is still a thing in California, right?
Yes. In fact, it's funny. A couple years ago, I was talking to my local Chevy dealer, and they're like, why do these wholesalers keep calling me wanting all my used SUVs? I'm like, well, they're flex fuel vehicles. And so if you want to drive a giant, car in California, not some toaster oven that runs on a little bitty battery, I mean, you would literally have E85 out there selling for like $2.20 a gallon. And right next to it would be their normal gas, which was $5, $6, and in bad times, even $7 a gallon. Yeah. And so the hottest market for used FFVs, flex fuel vehicles that can run on E85 in the world was California. So it is available out there at several hundred stations. It's not ubiquitous, but it is, it's again, once you put a carbon price on fuel, ethanol looks very attractive.
This is Farm Your Daily. We will continue the conversation in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at the marketplace. And it was a mixed trade at the close for Tuesday, December. Corn down 2 cents, 4.19 3/4. March falling 2 cents as well, 4.36 1/4. Soybeans in November, 4 1/4 more at 10.22, with January an increase of 3 1/4 at 10.39. Soybean meal in December, 20 cents a ton in the red, $276.90. Soybean oil in December, 2/3 of a penny more, 51.04 a pound. December wheat down 6 cents, 5.06 3/4, with March falling 5.5 at 5.24 3/4. Hard red winter wheat in December, 3.5 cents, down at 4.92. March, 3.5 cents weaker as well, 5.13 1/2. In the livestock market close for Tuesday, there was a bit of green in the cattle side. October lives $1.22 higher at $233.10. December rising $1.05 at $237.72. Feeder cattle in October $3.10 a hundredweight more, $365.50. With November rising $3.45 at $364.25. Lean hogs in December down $1.10 a hundredweight at $86.17. With February falling $1.27 at $88.27. That is the Tuesday market close. This is Farm Your Daily. So let's go over kind of a general economy moment, and that is we have biofuel plants that are not running at full capacity, even, I believe, in the state of Iowa. Yeah. And we also have a farm economy that is not doing really hot right now. We have multiple factors, including input price, land price, general costs of bushels, and also tariffs and exports going on. Yeah. And all that converging into one singular time frame. Normally it's spread out. So when you have all of that going on, one of the ways you could do that is having alternative ways to use all of those bushels. So how could we use potentially ethanol as a way to give farmers a better revenue stream and better prices, and also expand that market here?
Yeah, and this is one of those times where I take no pleasure over the phrase "I told you so." But I started giving speeches at our events 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, corn prices were still $7, and I'm up in front of a crowd of farmers saying, "Hey, we got a problem coming. If you look at the trajectory of just the fundamental supply growth, because what do farmers do? They compete like hell, and they're productive, right? So yields kept going up, and our demand was not going up at the same level because we had tapped out the E10 market, the 10% ethanol market here in the United States. We were trying to export some ethanol, but corn exports, demand for livestock, industrial uses, they're really pretty flat. They grow a little bit, but it's not a real market mover. So we kind of saw this train wreck coming and tried to say, hey, we need to get E15 out there now. By now, I mean 4 years ago. So if we'd have unlocked year-round nationwide E15 4 years ago, it'd probably be making a meaningful impact by now. But it's kind of like that old saying, the best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago. The second best time is today. Well, the best time to approve E15 year-round was probably 5 years ago, but the second best time is right now as part of whatever they do to get out of the government shutdown. It really needs to be in that bill because we need to get going. Farmers don't want bailouts. I know they're talking about taking some of the tariff money and doing bailouts, and not that we probably don't need it. I've talked to local bankers. I mean, I feel I'm not an economist. I'm not a banker, but just from all the conversations I have across the Midwest with people, I feel like we're on the cusp of the worst farm crisis in literally 40 years. And for the last 20 years, I've been so proud to be part of an industry that literally, how did we fix that supply-demand discrepancy coming out of the 80s and 90s? It was renewable fuels, folks. We grind up 5 billion bushels of corn, 4.5 billion bushels of corn, whatever it is. And that's what brought us back into equilibrium, and we had a good run. But as our renewable fuel demand leveled off, and the farmers do what they do, which is grow more on the same acres or fewer acres with less inputs. I mean, it's an amazing success story, but it's like they're their own worst nightmare or own worst enemy too. So I want to continue to see new markets, and that means E15 in the short run. And that means tapping into the ultra low carbon markets around the world. That might be sustainable aviation fuel. It might be marine fuel. It might be many other things, but we've got to have more demand, or there's no magic way out of this, right? You're either going to create demand for more corn, or you're going to produce less corn, or you're going to have a problem. And those are the three options. And I have a preference. My preference is we find demand for more corn because we can sell E15 nationwide here. That could be as much as, it might not be all of this, but it'd be as much as 7 billion gallons. That's a couple of billion bushels of corn that you could grow into. We're working on exports. Right now we're producing probably about 16, somewhere over 16, but 16 billion gallons of ethanol in this country. The plants that exist today could easily produce 18 billion gallons. Quite frankly, if there was like a huge market demand where you just said, to heck with efficiencies, we're going to produce all we can, I bet we could produce closer to 19 billion gallons. And there are many plants out there who have plans on the books to expand because they found areas of their plant that, hey, we can debottleneck here, we can debottleneck here. We're not talking about, super costly things. But right now it's like, it's hard to justify expansion projects when overhanging the market is already a couple billion gallons of capacity that's not being used. So we're ready to help. We need Congress to act. Congress needs to simply just not take no for an answer and demand that this be in there. The president supports year-round E15. The House Speaker does. The Senate Majority Leader does. Get it done. And in fact, this is one of those bad news, good news things. They just rescored the Congressional Budget Office score. They have to say, like, hey, what's the budget impact of these different provisions? Right. Before, even like last December, when we came close to getting it through in the year-end package, then they were like, it's budget neutral, no big deal. And we pointed out to them how it would impact farm costs. The bad news is the farm economy has gotten so bad that the projections for farm costs over the next decade are huge with the Farm Bill. Right. The good news on that is they now score year-round E15 as reducing farm program costs by $6 to $8 billion. So,
Wow.
folks, this ain't hard. It's not a mandate. No one has to sell it. No one has to buy it. It's not a tax credit. There's no government money involved whatsoever. It is just removing an outdated restriction on E15 in the summer. You do that, retailers can choose to offer it. Consumers can choose to buy it. They'll save money at the pump. We'll grind up corn. And, oh, by the way, we'll save the taxpayers $6 to $8 billion. This should not be hard, but it's Congress. So again, I'm going to tease Congress a little bit and say if California can actually get their act together before you, then that's kind of a wake-up call. Let's get going.
That is a perfect segue into my next question, which is there has been a huge initiative by national groups and many state groups to go to Washington, D.C. this past month and talk up ethanol E15 as their number one issue. And you describing it that way makes it make so much sense because while, maybe a little bit more important from a farmer standpoint, from a business standpoint, the Farm Bill has not been quite and I'm not saying it's not a priority, but it hasn't been quite as high as a priority from a lot of these groups than E15. So I was kind of wondering, why is that? And you seem to have given me a pretty good answer.
I mean, it's the difference between do you want to focus on a bailout or a new market? And farmers want to grow crops for the market. Look, nobody wants to lose the century farm. Okay. You're going to take out the crop insurance. You're going to do the things you have to do to protect your business. And I can justify those to anybody who wants to argue about that as long, all day long. I can tell you why it's very good public policy for us to have the farm safety net that we do, not just for the farmers, quite frankly. It's good for people who like to eat. And we go down that rabbit trail if you want to. But what we need is not a bailout every year. What we need is a plan to grow new markets. And especially, let's face it, the trade stuff, you can have all kinds of different opinions on is it worth it? Is it justified overall from various different aspects? But we can all agree that it hits hard on the ag economy. Even if you want to say it's justified for other reasons and other aspects and areas of national security and the national economy, okay, but at least admit to me that it is hard on farmers. And so at the same time that's going on, let's act to get year-round E15. And I really appreciate the national corn growers. Obviously, the national ethanol groups are doing that. Our board here at the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association has a very strong message for our Iowa delegation. This is the year. If we don't get E15 done this year, then let's just be honest that it's not going to happen for the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, we have a horrible farm economy. We have a president who wants it done. We have a speaker and a majority leader who are willing to get it done, as they showed last December. We have, close margins where the votes of Iowa and Nebraska and Minnesota and Wisconsin and South Dakota and Missouri, where they matter. They matter on these budget bills. They have to have Midwest votes to pass these budget bills. Well, if we can't leverage all of that stuff, and again, some of that's bad news, but hey, it's here. Let's use it. What's the old saying in D.C.? Never let a good crisis go to waste or something. It pains me to say that as a kid who came of age in the 1980s. It's not what I wanted to see, but it's where we find ourselves. And so our message is clear. Use the Midwest clout that we have and demand it. Do not come back for Christmas without E15 done, because there is just, David, honestly, tell me what can magically, if we can't get it done this year before Christmas, tell me what will happen that will let us get it done next year or the next year or the next year or the next year. Of all the things that are aligning that make it so important to have it happen. So on one hand, you have all these reasons to do it. On the other hand, we have a political situation where they need our support, the Midwest support, to get their other things done. If we don't get it this year, I honestly think I'll be sitting here talking to you in 10 years about the importance to get year-round E15. And maybe I won't be, because I think I would lose my mind if I was still talking about E15 a decade from now. So they probably
retired by that point.
I'd be locked up. No, I'm not old enough. I know I look that old, but I'm not actually that old. But I would be probably need to be locked up in somewhere for my own protection at that point in time. We just got to get this done. We have to demand that it's done this year. There are no excuses.
Monty, how then is the best way for folks to really help or, I guess, participate in ensuring year-round E15?
Yeah,
on a
I know a
national
lot
level?
of groups are doing the mass things where you click a button, you send a letter. That is important. Those things do matter. So if you haven't sent a letter or an email or gone to a town hall and bent the ear of your congressperson or your senator, do it. Do it now. Call them up and just be like, I mean, look, there are champions. I don't like to be like mean to our champions. We try to work with them. But this is one of those times where we have to make it very clear. We are on the cusp of a 40-year worst farm crisis. This is not an alarm. This is not a test of the emergency broadcast system. Okay, the alarm bells are going off. I talked to a community banker the other day. So it's kind of a family, but it's locally owned, mostly family-owned bank. Been in this small rural community in Northwest Iowa for a long time. This guy comes and says, "Monty, is this thing? Are we? Even though he's in rural Iowa, even in Iowa, like there's people that just aren't on the farm anymore, right? So,
Right, yeah.
So he drives by corn and soybeans every day. But he's like, is it really this bad? Or we'll just pop out the other side, won't we? Because we've had 20 years where it's been pretty good, and just a few bumps, we get through them." And I'm like, I wish I could tell you that. I can't tell you that. He's like, I'm looking at all these farm loans. He goes, I should be calling them in. I haven't yet because my grandpa did that in the 80s, and there's still people in this town who hate my grandpa. But he was just doing his job. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the banker that's remembered for calling in all the farm loans. That is the situation that's out there. And we need to tell our elected officials, get it done. They need your votes to get out to fund the government, whether it's a CR, whether it's appropriations, all these other things, debt ceilings. At some point in time, I think our Midwest champions just need to link arms and say, we're not helping you until you help us. And this is the number one thing that the farmers have identified that will help them create new markets in the short term. I agree with that, by the way. I don't see any other short-term market out there and that can make a sizable difference. And so I think we just have to be pretty blunt. This is one of those times when we lay down in front of the train, if that's what it takes. I hope it doesn't. I hope the president wants to see this done. I hope it can happen in a more less dramatic fashion. But this is one of those times where I would not want to be a member of Congress from the Midwest and come back for Christmas and tell my constituents, well, we'll try again next year. I just don't think that that's going to cut it this year. I think we've got to get it done. And I will do anything in my power to help them do that.
Well, Monte Shaw is the executive director of the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association, joining us on Farm Here Daily. Monte, thank you so much for your time and the chat about E15.
Always happy. Thank you.
This is Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Again, in order to continue to produce this type of local content, we would love to have you join our community. So please follow the podcast and check out our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. You can also find me on social media at Geiger Reports. Again, I am your host, David Geiger, and I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody.